Hi, I'm Brian Russell. Welcome back to class. I want to talk today about how to do detailed observation. You've done a survey so far. Now the next step is to learn how to make really deep, penetrating, descriptive observations on a smaller part of a text. Now in the broader IBS process, we would be taking a strategic area from your survey and then doing a deep dive into it. Now, in terms of format, here's what you're going to be doing for your assignment. We're going to essentially separate out observations and then ask questions. Again, if you haven't already watched the video on how to do good detailed observation work, stop this and go back and look at the previous video because this is assuming that. So your format is you're going to have observations and questions. Again, you don't have to do it in two columns like I'm going to illustrate, so you can type out, if you're having a computer, you don't have to do columns, just do observations and then separate out the questions underneath of that. But you're going to make observations on a passage. For our first assignment, we're going to be working on Matthew 4, verses 17 and follows. Again, make sure you check the online classroom for the specific verses, but we're going to be doing a couple of verses from including 4:17 and a couple of verses that come after it. Now, what kind of things should you observe? Again, watch the previous video, but in terms of format, I suggest making observations at several different levels when you're working on a detailed observation. Make some structural observations about the structures that you see in the couple of verses that you're working on. That'll help you to get kind of a bigger picture, but make structural observations. Then make general observations. Remember, what's an observation? You're trying to ask the question, what is here? So I might even put that over here. What is here is our guiding question, okay? So make some structural observations and then make observations about the text as a whole. What can you say about the whole forest that you're observing? And then go verse by verse if you're doing multiple verses. What can you say about each verse as a whole? What can you say then about each clause that you're looking at? What phrase? And then all the way down to the key words. So again, you don't have to be quite this wooden and methodical, but you want to think like that. Or maybe you do the opposite. Start with the words and move upwards. But you want to make sure that you look at the text through multiple levels, the whole all the way down to the tiniest portions, which would be individual key words. And I would also suggest that you think about the broader context and make a few observations. Don't get bogged down here because the purpose of a detailed observation is to look carefully at the whole text, but observe the broader context. Okay, and then for each observation, and again, how many observations should you have for an assignment? You should have a lot. Okay, if you only have 3 or 4 or even 10, you haven't spent enough time. You should be spending at least 4 hours on a detailed observation assignment. So, I mean, you do the math. So if you only have 10 and you spent 4 hours, you only did about 2.5 an hour. So every 25 minutes, you got an idea. You know, write a lot of observations, but then for each observation, make sure that you ask all 3 types of questions. Now, this kind of assignment can be frustrating, but you need to think about this as a means to an end. This is teaching skills that will serve you well long-term for IBS. Now, does that mean for the rest of your life you're going to be writing 3 questions for every observation? No. But what the process does now is it teaches you, make an observation, and then instead of jumping to a conclusion, it teaches you to ask a question which will do what? Help you to dive even deeper into the text, okay? You're also not going to be answering any of these questions during this process. You're just asking lots of questions. It's kind of like the Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off, paint the fence, sand the floor. Those little pieces then all go together and all of a sudden the Karate Kid knew karate, right? It was really cool. So you work on this. Mechanically write out all these observations and then 3 questions for each observation. So if you have 10 observations, you're going to have a minimum of 30 questions, right? So keep them together. Okay, let's stop talking theoretically about detailed observation and let's illustrate what this actually looks like on the ground. Now, I picked a very familiar passage just to give a couple of examples. Let's look at Psalm 23:1, and I would invite you then to actually stop this video for a second, get out your Bible, or just think about the text, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And I would just invite you to spend maybe 5 minutes making some observations, and then come back on and turn this video back on. All right, did you do your homework? Yeah, it's really important that you practice. You practice, we reflect. We practice, we reflect. Let's make a few observations, though, just to illustrate this. So what's here? The Lord is my shepherd. Now, we can note, for one thing, that the psalm talks about the Lord. You know what? I observe. You don't have to mechanically write observe every time, but that's a way to do it. I observe the personal name Lord, which is Yahweh, not God or any other kind of word. It's interesting that we have this particular word. So questions. What is the meaning of the use of the Lord? Why the Lord versus some other name? Implications. Okay, so there's my definitional, rational, and implicational right there, right? All right, see, that's one observation. Now, let's just make another one. Let's just note, again, we could say the same kind of thing about shepherd, and if you look at the previous video, it even illustrated this. It doesn't say your shepherd, his shepherd, our shepherd. It says personal shepherd. So we can make an observation about that, but you can go and look at the other video and look at that worksheet for that example. Let's make an observation about I shall not want. And doesn't it look like here, what's the relationship? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It looks like structure-wise that these two lines are structured by cause effect. So I made a structural observation. The cause is Yahweh is shepherd. And the effect is I shall not want. And again, definitional, rational, implicational. What is the meaning of this causal movement? From God is shepherd to I shall not want. Why this use of causation? Implications. Okay, and I can go on and say more here, but this will just get you started with a couple of observations. And again, I can imagine 10, 15, 20 more things that I can just say about this. So, shut off this video, review what we've said about detailed observation, and then why don't you immediately take action and jump into your assignment on Matthew chapter 4. Again, I'm Brian Russell. It's my privilege to serve as your instructor this semester. If you have any questions or if I can help you in any way, let me know, and I'll see you next time.